Before fame found her, before the world knew her name, there was a girl sitting alone at a piano in New York City, writing songs that no one would hear, nursing wounds that no one could see, convinced that her weirdness would be her curse. But what if I told you that same girl would become one of the most fearless, boundary-shattering artists of our generation, transforming pain into power and loneliness into a movement that would touch millions? Welcome to Star's Tale, where we dive deep into the untold stories behind the icons you think you know, peeling back the glittering surface to reveal the raw, beating heart underneath. And today, we're stepping into the extraordinary, heartbreaking, and ultimately triumphant journey of a woman who taught the world that being different isn't just okay, it's revolutionary. So settle in, because this is the story of Lady Gaga, and trust me, you've never heard it like this before. Stefani Joanne Angelina Germanata was born on March 28, 1986, on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, into an Italian-American family that valued hard work, faith, and tradition. Her father Joseph, an entrepreneur, her mother Cynthia, a telecommunications executive, and from the outside looking in, this was a family that had made it, living in a neighborhood where success was measured in square footage and private school tuition. But inside that comfortable existence, there was a little girl who never quite fit the mold, a child who felt things too deeply, who heard music in colors and saw stories in every face she passed on the street. From the age of 4, Stefani was drawn to the piano like a moth to flame, her tiny fingers finding melodies before she could even read sheet music, and her parents, recognizing something special, enrolled her in piano lessons that would become her sanctuary, those black and white keys, the first language she spoke fluently, the first place where the noise in her head made sense. But school was a different story altogether, because while other girls were content to blend in, to wear the same clothes and like the same things and never rock the boat, Stefani was the one asking questions that made teachers uncomfortable, wearing outfits that made other kids whisper, expressing opinions that were too big, too loud, too much for the careful social choreography of adolescence. She attended the convent of the Sacred Heart, an all-girls Catholic school on Manhattan's Upper East Side, the same institution that had shaped the lives of wealthy, powerful women for generations. But for Stefani, those hallowed halls became a battleground, a place where her differences were magnified under the harsh fluorescent lights of teenage judgment, where girls who would grow up to be investment bankers and society wives looked at her like she was a fascinating but ultimately disposable curiosity. The bullying started small, as it always does, whispered comments about her appearance, her intensity, the way she threw herself into every performance like her life depended on it. But it grew into something more vicious, girls making Facebook groups dedicated to mocking her, calling her ugly, weird, desperate, a tryhard who would never be cool no matter how talented she was, and every cruel word landed like a punch, leaving bruises that wouldn't show up in any mirror but would shape the woman she was becoming in ways both terrible and transformative. At 11 years old, Stefani experienced something that would haunt her for decades, a trauma she wouldn't speak about publicly until much later in her life. A violation that shattered her sense of safety and planted seeds of PTSD that would bloom in devastating ways as she navigated the pressures of fame. And while the details remain hers to share or keep private, what matters is understanding that beneath the fearless persona she would later construct, there was a wounded girl carrying a secret weight, learning to armor herself in sequins and shock value because vulnerability had already cost her too much. Music became her escape and her weapon, the place where she could channel all the pain and confusion and rage into something beautiful, something that might make people feel less alone. And by her teenage years, she was writing songs that were too sophisticated for her age, performing at open mic nights in New York's downtown scene, a young girl with an old soul and a voice that could shatter glass or caress you like a lullaby depending on what the song demanded. Her parents supported her dreams but also pushed for stability, for backup plans, so Stefani enrolled at New York University's Tisch School of the Arts, studying music and theater, immersing herself in the craft. But after just a year, she made the decision that would change everything. She dropped out, telling her parents she was going to make it on her own terms, that the traditional path wasn't for her, and you can imagine the fear in her mother's eyes, the tension at the dinner table, the weight of choosing yourself over security. But Stefani had tasted freedom and there was no going back. She was 19, broke, and determined, living in a tiny apartment on the Lower East Side, waitressing to pay rent, performing at dive bars where the audience was more interested in their drinks than her dreams, and the rejections came fast and brutal. Record labels who said she was too theatrical, too weird, not pretty enough, not conventional enough, not safe enough to bet money on, and each no felt like confirmation of everything those mean girls had said, that maybe she really was too much, too different, destined to be an outsider forever. But then she met a music producer who saw something special, who helped her create a demo that got her signed to Def Jam Records, and for a brief, shining moment, Stefani thought she'd made it, thought the struggle was over, but the universe had other plans. The label dropped her after just 3 months, deciding she wasn't worth the investment, and the devastation was complete. The dream she'd sacrificed everything for slipping through her fingers like water, and she went home and cried until she couldn't cry anymore, questioning everything, wondering if everyone who'd ever doubted her had been right all along. It was in that darkness that something shifted, because Stefani had a choice. She could give up, could go back to school, could choose the safe path and live with the what-ifs forever, or she could transform, could kill off the parts of herself that weren't working and birth something entirely new, something so bold and undeniable that the industry would have no choice but to pay attention, and that's when Lady Gaga was born. The name itself was a reference to Queen's radio Gaga, but it was more than just a stage name. It was a complete reinvention, a larger-than-life persona that allowed Stefani to be everything she'd always wanted to be without apology, to weaponize her weirdness, to turn her pain into performance art, to say to everyone who'd ever rejected her, "Watch this." She started performing in the downtown club scene, go-go dancing in nothing but her underwear and platform heels while she sang, creating art installations out of her performances, collaborating with performance artist Lady Starlight to develop a theatrical, shocking stage presence that was part Warhol, part Bowie, part something entirely her own, and people started to take notice, not because she fit in but because she so gloriously, defiantly didn't. Producer Redone became a crucial collaborator, helping her craft the sound that would define her early career, that pulsing, infectious dance pop that got under your skin and made you move even if you didn't want to, but with lyrics that were smarter and more subversive than typical club music, songs about fame and fashion and fun that were also deeply critical of the culture they were celebrating, and this duality, this ability to be commercial and artistic, accessible and avant-garde, would become her signature. When Just Dance dropped in 2008, featuring Colby O'Donnell and Akon, it didn't immediately set the world on fire. In fact, it took months of slow climbing before it hit number 1, but when it did, the floodgates opened, and suddenly this weird girl from New York was everywhere, the song becoming the soundtrack to clubs and parties and moments of abandon across the globe, and Gaga was just getting started. The Fame era was a masterclass in pop domination, with hit after hit. Poker Face with its sexual ambiguity and addictive hook, Paparazzi with its commentary on celebrity culture delivered through a cinematic video that showcased her commitment to visual storytelling, and Love Game with its raw, unapologetic sexuality. But what made Gaga different from every other pop star wasn't just the music, it was everything around it: the fashion that made headlines, the meat dress at the VMAs that sparked global conversation, the egg entrance at the Grammys, every appearance a piece of performance art designed to provoke, to challenge, to make you think even as you danced. The Fame monster came next, technically an EP but really a statement of artistic ambition, and Bad Romance became not just a song but a cultural phenomenon, that video with its disturbing imagery and incredible choreography proving that Gaga wasn't content to just make hits, she wanted to create art that would endure, that would mean something, and the song itself was a twisted exploration of desire and obsession, the kind of pop music that critics had to take seriously because it was doing something genuinely new. Her fashion choices became legendary: the Kermit the Frog dress, the dress made entirely of meat, which she wore to make a statement about equality and being true to yourself, later preserved and displayed in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the face prosthetics and alien couture, working with designers like Alexander McQueen and Thierry Mugler to create looks that were less about clothes and more about transformation, about showing the world that identity is fluid, that you can be whoever you want to be. And for the kids watching, the bullied, the different, the ones who felt like they'd never belong, Gaga was sending a clear message: your weirdness is your power. But fame came with costs that no one talks about in the fairy tale version of success, because while the world saw Mother Monster leading her little monsters into a new era of pop, behind the scenes, Gaga was struggling with chronic pain from a condition called fibromyalgia, dealing with the resurfacing of old traumas triggered by the pressures and violations of celebrity, fighting addiction issues that she rarely discussed publicly but that threatened to consume her during those early years of relentless touring and promotion. And through it all, she kept performing, kept creating, kept showing up because she felt a responsibility to her fans, to the kids who wrote her letters saying she'd saved their lives. The Born This Way era in 2011 was Gaga at her most ambitious and vulnerable, the title track becoming an anthem for the LGBTQ+ community and anyone who'd ever felt marginalized, with its message of self-acceptance and innate worth, declaring God makes no mistakes in a world that constantly tells people they're wrong for being who they are. And the album debuted with the biggest first-week sales in years, proving that Gaga's brand of fearless, inclusive pop wasn't just niche, it was universal. And the Monster Ball Tour became one of the highest-grossing tours of all time, with Gaga performing through injuries and exhaustion because she refused to let her fans down. She'd become more than a musician, she was a movement, a leader, a voice for the voiceless, starting the Born This Way Foundation with her mother Cynthia to focus on youth empowerment and mental health, using her platform to speak out against bullying, to advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, to challenge the industry's standards of beauty and normalcy, and she did it all while still delivering the hits, still giving performances that were technically perfect and emotionally devastating, still proving she was one of the most talented musicians of her generation. Then came art pop in 2013, and this is where the narrative gets complicated, because this was Gaga trying to push even further into avant-garde territory, collaborating with artists like Jeff Koons on the album cover, creating music that was intentionally challenging and experimental, but the public reception was mixed, critics calling it overwrought, fans divided on the direction, and for the first time, Gaga faced the reality that fearlessness doesn't always translate to commercial success. That the industry and audience have limits to how far they'll follow you into the weird, and the disappointment was crushing, because this was the album she'd poured everything into, her most personal statement, and watching it underperform felt like rejection all over again, like maybe she really had flown too close to the sun. The hip injury she'd been ignoring finally became impossible to hide, requiring surgery that forced her to cancel tour dates, and during that recovery period, something shifted in Gaga, a recognition that she'd been running so hard for so long, trying to prove herself, trying to be everything to everyone, that she'd lost touch with the simple joy that made her fall in love with music in the first place, the girl at the piano who just wanted to sing. So she stripped it all back for Cheek to Cheek, a jazz standards album with Tony Bennett that shocked everyone who thought they had Gaga figured out, proving she could stand next to a legend and hold her own with nothing but her voice and a microphone, no gimmicks, no costumes, just pure talent, and the album won a Grammy, critics praising her technical skill and emotional depth. And you could see in her eyes during those performances that she was finding her way back to herself, remembering why she started all this in the first place. But the real transformation came with Joanne in 2016, named after her father's sister who died before Gaga was born, and this album was Gaga at her most stripped down and honest, trading the dance beats for rock and country influences, writing songs about her family, her pain, her attempts to be human in an industry that wanted her to be a spectacle, and while some fans missed the pop extravagance, others appreciated this raw vulnerability, songs like Million Reasons and Joanne showcasing her voice without the production tricks, just Stefani and her stories, and it felt like coming home. Then came the role that would change how the world saw her forever when Bradley Cooper approached her about starring in A Star Is Born, a remake that had already been done multiple times. Many in Hollywood were skeptical, writing it off as another vanity project, another pop star trying to act, but when that film premiered in 2018, it silenced every doubter. Because Gaga didn't just act, she inhabited Ally, bringing a raw authenticity to the role that came from living so much of that story herself, understanding the cost of fame, the way love can be both salvation and destruction, and her chemistry with Cooper was electric, their performances of Shallow becoming iconic, the film earning her an Oscar nomination for Best Actress and ultimately winning her the Oscar for Best Original Song, and watching her accept that award, tears streaming down her face, you could see the little girl who'd been bullied, who'd been told she wasn't pretty enough, who'd been dropped by labels, standing there holding proof that she'd been right to believe in herself all along. Shallow became more than a song, it became a cultural moment, that moment in the film where Ally steps onto the stage for the first time, terrified and exhilarated, finding her voice, and every time Gaga performed it live, you could feel the emotion, the way she wasn't just singing lyrics but reliving every moment of doubt and triumph that brought her to that stage, and it topped charts worldwide, won Grammys, became one of the best-selling songs of all time, proof that authenticity resonates deeper than any gimmick ever could. But even as she was reaching these new heights, the darkness was always there, lurking, because in 2019, Gaga opened up about her struggles with mental health more than ever before, discussing her diagnosis of PTSD, revealing the sexual assault she'd experienced at 19, explaining how chronic pain had become her constant companion, and rather than diminishing her in fans' eyes, this vulnerability made her even more powerful, more real, because she was showing that you don't have to be okay all the time, that survival is its own kind of heroism, that asking for help is strength not weakness. Chromatica arrived in 2020, right as the world was shutting down from the pandemic, and it was Gaga returning to the dance floor but bringing all her pain with her, songs about healing through movement, about finding joy even in darkness, the album cover showing her in a pink armored suit on an alien planet, a visual metaphor for rebuilding yourself in a hostile world, and tracks like Rain on Me with Ariana Grande became anthems for pushing through, for dancing even when you want a break down, and the album debuted at #1, proving that Gaga's ability to reinvent while staying true to her core message of acceptance and resilience was as strong as ever. She performed at President Biden's inauguration in January 2021, singing the national anthem in a dramatic custom Schiaparelli gown, and the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Here was a woman who'd built her career on being unapologetically different, on advocating for the marginalized, singing at the transfer of power after one of the most divisive periods in American history, and her voice, clear and powerful and achingly beautiful, felt like a promise of something better, a reminder that art matters, that voices matter, that the freaks and the outsiders and the ones who never fit in are exactly who we need leading us forward. Then came House of Gucci in 2021, where Gaga transformed into Patricia Reggiani, the woman who orchestrated the murder of her ex-husband, fashion heir Maurizio Gucci, and once again, Gaga proved she was a serious actress, completely disappearing into the role with an Italian accent she maintained for 9 months of filming, a commitment to character that bordered on obsessive. And while the film itself received mixed reviews, critics were unanimous in praising Gaga's performance, her ability to find humanity in a monstrous character, to make you understand if not sympathize with Patricia's descent into violence, and she earned another Oscar nomination, cementing her status as a legitimate actress, not just a pop star playing dress-up. Throughout all of this, her relationship with her fans, her little monsters, remained the core of who she is, because Gaga has always understood that fame is nothing without connection, that the kids who showed up to her concerts in homemade costumes, who wrote her letters about how her music got them through suicidal thoughts, who found families in her fan community when their biological families rejected them, they're the reason any of this matters, and she's never taken that for granted. Always taking time to meet fans, to read their stories, to let them know they're seen. Her fashion evolution has been remarkable to witness, starting with the shocking meat dresses and bubble dresses and telephone hats, moving through the glamorous old Hollywood elegance of the Tony Bennett era, the Western-inspired looks of Joanne, the pink-armored futurism of Chromatica, always using fashion as another language to tell stories, to challenge norms, to show that clothing isn't just about covering your body, it's about expressing your soul, and her collaborations with designers from the unknown to the legendary have made her a fashion icon whose influence can be seen everywhere from runways to Halloween costumes. But let's talk about what fame has actually cost her, because the narrative of success often leaves out the sacrifices, the relationships that couldn't survive the pressure, her engagement to talent agent Christian Carino ending quietly, her previous relationship with actor Taylor Kinney dissolving despite their obvious love because the demands of their careers made togetherness impossible, and Gaga has spoken honestly about the loneliness of fame, about how hard it is to trust people's intentions when you're constantly wondering if they want you or Lady Gaga, about going home to an empty house after performing for thousands, about the way chronic pain makes simple pleasures complicated, about taking medication for mental health conditions while knowing that people will use it to discredit or diminish you. The fibromyalgia she lives with isn't just occasional discomfort, it's debilitating pain that has forced her to cancel shows, to film herself crying from the physical agony, to be vulnerable about the fact that her body is fighting against her even as she asks it to do superhuman things on stage, and she's used her platform to raise awareness, to help other people with invisible illnesses feel less alone, to challenge the narrative that if you can't see someone's pain, it must not be real. In 2020, she launched House Laboratories, her own beauty brand, but true to form, it wasn't just about selling makeup, it was about democratizing beauty, making professional quality products accessible, celebrating self-expression in all its forms, encouraging people to use makeup as art, as armor, as play, as whatever they need it to be, and the brand's success showed that Gaga's influence extends far beyond music, that she's built an empire based on the simple but revolutionary idea that everyone deserves to feel beautiful on their own terms. Her philanthropy often flies under the radar, overshadowed by the more spectacular aspects of her career, but the Born This Way Foundation has done real, measurable work in schools and communities, focusing on mental health resources, anti-bullying programs, and youth empowerment, and Gaga has donated millions to various causes, from disaster relief to LGBTQ+ organizations to medical research, using her wealth and influence to try to make the world slightly less cruel for the next generation of weird kids who don't fit in. Watching her career trajectory, what becomes clear is that Gaga's greatest talent isn't just her voice or her songwriting or her performance ability, it's her fearlessness and evolution, her refusal to be boxed in, her commitment to growth even when it would be easier and more profitable to just keep giving people what they already know they like. And that's rare in an industry that loves to find a formula and repeat it until the returns diminish, but Gaga has never been interested in playing it. safe, even when playing it safe would hurt less. Her Vegas residency, Enigma and later Jazz and Piano, showed her range beautifully, one show featuring all the pop spectacle and hits people expected, the other showcasing her as a pure musician, and the fact that she could excel at both, could be Mother Monster and Stefani Germanotta in the same venue on different nights, proved what she'd been saying all along: she contains multitudes, and limiting her to one version of herself is missing the entire point. Right now, in 2026, Gaga continues to work on new music, her 7th studio album reportedly in progress, and while details are scarce because she likes to surprise people, what we know is that she's collaborating with producers both familiar and new, that she's drawing on everything she's learned, every genre she's explored, every emotional territory she's mapped, and there's anticipation in the air, a sense that whatever comes next will be another reinvention, another statement, another challenge to herself and her audience to go deeper, be braver, feel more. She's also been selective about acting roles, turning down offers that don't excite her, waiting for projects that matter, that let her stretch and grow, because she's proven she doesn't need to take every opportunity, she can afford to be choosy, to prioritize quality over quantity, artistic fulfillment over commercial calculation, and that's the privilege earned through years of hard work and smart decisions and not selling out even when selling out would have been so much easier. Her influence on pop culture is undeniable and ongoing. You can trace a direct line from Gaga's early fearlessness to the current generation of pop stars who feel freer to experiment, to be weird, to blur genre lines. Artists like Billie Eilish and Lil Nas X and Rina Sawayama, who grew up watching Gaga, refused to conform and learned that lesson, that authenticity is more powerful than perfection, that the market will eventually catch up to innovation if you're patient and persistent enough. The LGBTQ+ community has especially embraced her as not just an ally but a true advocate, someone who used her platform before it was trendy or profitable to do so, who showed up to Pride events and benefits and protests, who put her money and time where her mouth was, who made it clear that her support wasn't performative, it was personal, rooted in her own experiences with marginalization, her understanding that we're all just trying to survive in a world that wants to sand off our rough edges. And for queer kids growing up in hostile environments, Gaga's message that they were born this way wasn't just a song, it was permission to exist, to take up space, to refuse shame. Looking toward the future, what's next for Lady Gaga feels wonderfully unpredictable, because she's at a point in her career where she's proven everything she needed to prove, where she has the freedom to follow her curiosity wherever it leads, maybe more acting, maybe a return to theater, maybe experimental music that doesn't chase commercial success, maybe more philanthropy and activism, maybe a combination of all of the above, and the exciting thing is that with Gaga, you truly never know. She could announce tomorrow that she's doing a heavy metal album or writing a musical or running for office, and none of it would be entirely surprising because she's never been bound by expectations. What seems certain is that she'll keep creating, keep pushing, keep using her art to start conversations and challenge assumptions and make people feel less alone, because that's been the through line of her entire career. From the girl playing piano in dive bars to the woman accepting Oscars, it's always been about connection, about using her pain and joy and weirdness to build bridges to other people's pain and joy and weirdness, about creating a space where difference is celebrated rather than punished. Her legacy is already secure. She's sold hundreds of millions of records, won every major award, redefined what a pop star can be and do, inspired countless artists and activists and individuals just trying to get through another day. But the most important part of that legacy might be the permission she's given people to be themselves, fully and unapologetically, to take the things that make them different and weird and turn them into superpowers rather than sources of shame, and you can't measure that impact in sales figures or award counts. It lives in the kid who didn't kill themselves because a Gaga song made them feel seen, in the trans teenager who found courage to come out because Gaga modeled that bravery, in the adult who finally pursued their artistic dreams because they watched someone succeed by refusing to compromise. The journey from Stefani Germanotta to Lady Gaga to wherever she's going next isn't a simple rags to riches story or a predictable hero's journey. It's messier and more interesting than that, full of setbacks and reinventions and moments of doubt and triumph that feel earned rather than given. And what makes her story so compelling is that it's not finished. She's still evolving, still questioning, still creating, still fighting her demons and celebrating her victories and trying to figure out how to be human in an industry that wants her to be an icon. The wounds from her past, the bullying, the trauma, the chronic pain, the loneliness, they haven't healed completely and maybe they never will, but Gaga has learned to make art from those wounds, to transform suffering into something that might ease someone else's suffering, and that alchemy, that ability to take the worst things that happen to you and spin them into gold that you share with the world, that's the real magic. That's what makes someone a true artist rather than just a talented performer. So when you watch Lady Gaga perform, whether she's in full theatrical costume and production or sitting at a piano in a simple dress, what you're witnessing is the culmination of every rejection, every moment of doubt, every time she chose to be herself even when being herself seemed like the hardest, most terrifying option. You're seeing someone who decided that they would rather fail as themselves than succeed as someone else, and that decision, made over and over again despite the cost, is what transformed a bullied girl from New York into a global phenomenon who changed pop music forever. The future holds more music, more films, more unexpected turns, more moments that will make us question what we thought we knew about her, and more proof that the only constant with Gaga is change, growth, evolution, a refusal to let anyone, including herself, put her in a box and seal it shut, and as she moves forward, carrying her past but not defined by it, using her platform to lift others while continuing to do the work of healing herself, what becomes clear is that Lady Gaga's greatest performance isn't any specific song or role, it's the ongoing performance of becoming, of choosing authenticity over acceptance, of building a life and career that's true to her vision even when that vision seems impossible or impractical or too much for the world to handle, and in doing so, she's shown millions of people that they can do the same, that being too much is actually being exactly enough, that the world needs your weirdness because normal is overrated and change only comes from those brave enough to be different. This is the story of Lady Gaga, but really, it's the story of anyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong, who's ever been told they were too much or not enough, who's ever wondered if their differences would destroy them only to discover that those differences were actually their greatest gifts. And if you've made it this far, if you've walked with me through her childhood pain and her creative breakthroughs and her ongoing struggles and triumphs, then you understand that this isn't just celebrity gossip or entertainment news. This is a testament to the power of refusing to give up on yourself, of believing that your voice matters even when the world keeps trying to silence it, of turning your wounds into wisdom and your struggles into songs that help someone else survive, and that's worth celebrating, worth remembering, worth carrying forward as we all navigate our own journeys of becoming. So I want to hear from you now. What moment in Lady Gaga's story resonates with you the most? Have you ever felt like an outsider who had to choose between fitting in and being yourself? Has her music or message helped you through a difficult time? Drop a comment below and let's keep this conversation going because that's what Star's Tale is all about, exploring these stories together, finding the connections between their journeys and ours, understanding that fame doesn't exempt anyone from pain, but it can amplify their ability to heal through art and honesty. If this deep dive into Lady Gaga's life moved you, challenged you, or gave you a new perspective on someone you thought you knew, show some love by hitting that like button. It helps more people find these stories and join our community of curious souls who believe that everyone's story matters, not just the highlight reel but the real, messy, complicated truth of being human. And if you're not already subscribed to Star's Tale, what are you waiting for? Because this is just the beginning. We've got so many more stories to explore, so many icons to understand on a deeper level, so many lessons to learn from the people who've dared to live boldly despite the cost. So hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and come along for this ride because I promise you, the best stories are the ones we haven't told yet, and I can't wait to share them with you.